Well, I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. Continue to enjoy it. We're ready to go to another one of our best segments of our SAC, and that's our annual OEM panel. And you're in for a definite treat. So I'd like to introduce Andrew Ford, who's the CEO of ZLA Solutions, sponsor for this portion of the program, and he will kick off the event. Andrew.
Good afternoon. A little taller. My name is Andrew Ford, and I'm the CEO of ZLA Solutions. We are proud to be a sponsor of today's event. As most of you can see, we're actually located right over there at 1327. We'd love to see everybody today and come over and register with us. We're giving out some Kindle Fires and some different things. But for just a second, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do. We are a veteran-owned, ISO-certified, automotive-only staffing, logistics, direct hire executive recruitment and talent management, and then we also do off-site assembly and packaging. So at ZLA, we will actually come to your plant, pick up your parts, send them back to our plant. We'll either do quality inspection on them, assemble them, kit them, package, really anything that you need, and then our own logistics team will actually send it back to you, all for one rate. So we offer a different solution for almost every automotive company that's out there can use us in some form or fashion. So I would love to welcome everybody over to our booth, 1327. Please feel free to come by and see us and introduce yourself. We'd love to network with you. And thank you all and have a great evening. Oh, I apologize. Actually, don't let me forget to introduce John Warniak. He is the OEM Roundtable moderator today. So give it up for John.
Well, thank you, and again, welcome to SAC 2018 here. It's an honor to be here. You're probably wondering, what the heck is an aftermarket guy doing here at SAC 2018 on an OEM panel? Well, I can tell you, basically, with Automotive 4.0, and as I said earlier, Automobility 4.0, collaboration is a key factor for success in Automobility 4.0. And collaboration is tough. Best way I can describe collaboration is a breakfast of ham and eggs down here in Atlanta. The chicken is involved in that breakfast, but the pig is committed. And we're going to hear a lot about collaboration. If you take the Honda General Motors fuel cell collaboration to get to the future in technology with fuel cells, the Toyota BMW partnership to develop a sports car that's actually going to be built and produced by Magna Star, with Magna right here. Great example of collaboration. And certainly, we'll hear from Mark Brazil on the Mazda-Toyota partnership and collaboration. So great opportunities there. As we look forward, I think there's a lot of things that we're going to cover today. We'll have some questions from the, speaker grid that we have, but some very good types of things happening in the industry. And kudos to GAMA and Rick for putting this OEM panel together. So we're going to get started pretty quickly, but one comment I want to make is that competing today is tough. Certainly collaboration you need and generative design, the mega trends going on in the industry. But if you harken back to like Peter Drucker and some of the principles of leadership, there's two races you got to run today. First one is operational excellence. And that's running the same race faster. You got to be able to do that. The second race you have to run at the same time is strategic positioning. That's running a different race. So you got to run the same race faster, and you got to run a different race, and you got to do both at the same time. That's what we're going to be talking about with this great group of folks we have. So to kick things off, Mark Brazil from the Mazda-Toyota partnership will be our first guest speaker. Please welcome Mark to the podium.
Okay.
There's your zapper. Set.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Brazil, and I am the Vice President of Administration at Mazda Toyota Manufacturing USA. First, before I start the presentation, I would just like to again congratulate this year's Stars of Manufacturing. You know, the pace of work, the standards of work in the automotive industry are very challenging. And the fact that these stars, and really and truly that's what they are, they're stars. The fact that these stars can compete at the highest level, you know, and perform their jobs at the highest level and really, you know, supersede their peers, of which there are many stars in the industry, is quite an accomplishment. So I would just like to you know, congratulate them again. Now, I do have a very simple PowerPoint presentation to share just a bit of information about the new Mazda Toyota Manufacturing Joint Venture located in Huntsville, Alabama. But real quick, I wanted to share a little information about myself. I started work with Toyota back in 2002 during the greenfield startup of the Toyota Huntsville engine plant. So this will be actually my second greenfield startup, and I'm still quite amazed that I actually agreed to that. Those of you that have been part of a greenfield startup, you know what I mean. Lots of challenging long days, but it is most certainly a journey that is well worth it. Through my 16 and a half years at Toyota, I've had various positions in both administration and manufacturing. But one thing I want to point out is obviously this is my first joint venture type of experience. Now, when I speak today, I have to, you know, let you know that I'm going to be really speaking from the lens of my Toyota experience, simply because I don't have the Mazda experience yet. But I am certainly immersing myself into the Mazda culture so that I can learn the culture of Mazda. Now, as far as the products that we're going to produce there in Huntsville, number one, we will produce the Mazda SUV. It's going to be a crossover SUV. Now, the picture on the slide there is not the crossover SUV that we'll actually manufacture. I thought I would put a Mazda SUV there, though, instead of just putting TBD. The Toyota product is going to be the Toyota Corolla. So again, a Mazda crossover SUV and also the Toyota Corolla. Now, the recent announcement of our new $1.6 billion joint venture will create 4,000 jobs there at the facility and allow us to build 300,000 vehicles on an annual basis. The site itself is 2,000 acres, and it is a beautiful site with very close proximity to both Interstate 65 and also Interstate 565, which is kind of the spur between I-65 and the city of Huntsville. So for logistics, it is an ideal site. The facility will also be a little over 3 million square feet. We do plan to start production in 2021. We'll start the Toyota production lineup in early 2021, and then in the summer of 2021, we will start production on the Mazda line. So, due to the nature of this joint venture, we are truly trying to merge the cultures of the two companies and create a new Mazda Toyota manufacturing culture. However, we most assuredly will not stray too far from the cultures of each parent company. Cultural aspects from Mazda's brand value management, such as the winning circle concept, ensures a proper balance of prosperity among customers, shareholders, and also the company, will be merged and blended with Toyota's foundational cultural aspects of respect and continuous improvement. Now, what I've learned so far is the companies do have a lot of shared DNA, but we also have a lot of unique points, so that will ensure that we can actually, you know, learn from each other. And I really do think that is the overall goal of the joint venture, is to create that synergy when two companies come together and they share that manufacturing knowledge and best practices. Overall, we take supplier relationships very seriously. We know that our success is contingent upon the support and performance of our supplier partners. We simply cannot build vehicles without our suppliers. Now, to achieve sustainable growth, suppliers as well as all the OEMs need to first achieve the highest level of safety for our team members, the highest level of quality for our customers, and then achieve flexible and stable production. Then we can have competitive cost. And as you see, I've talked about safety, quality, and stable, flexible production first before cost, as I truly think those are the key ingredients to achieving cost competitiveness. Now, supplier expectations. Here are some simple expectations that we have for our supply base. We need suppliers that are offering innovative product designs and also VAVE ideas that reduce cost but do not jeopardize product, safety, or quality. We need our suppliers to challenge logistics efficiencies and parts delivery systems to ensure just-in-time delivery of just the right quantity of parts. Of course, we all expect great quality, but we have learned recently with the shift of customer demand from from sedans to light trucks and SUVs, that our suppliers must be as flexible to the customer demand changes as we challenge to be. Finally, over and over, we have seen negative impacts to both quality and delivery as a result of failing to properly manage change points. So we do need our suppliers to manage change points very quickly, and if any abnormal conditions arise as a result of change points, to escalate that to us very quickly so we can help them and collaborate with the suppliers to overcome those types of business struggles. Suppliers are not the only ones that have a difficult time sometimes managing change points. Change points come very quickly sometimes in the automotive industry, and that's something that we all have to focus on and can improve upon. And certainly I challenge ourselves and our suppliers to manage those types of change points very strongly. Okay,
Thank you.
that's my presentation, John.
Right there.
Okay, yep.
Well, thank you, Mark. You set the stage very well, so great comments about the Mazda-Toyota partnership and collaboration that we'll get to in some of the Q&A. So next up is Stuart Countess from Kia, and Chief Administration Officer. I think, again, how do you put all this stuff together, and what are the needs and expectations from the OEMs of suppliers? So please welcome Stuart Countess to the podium.
Well, good afternoon. Again, my name is Stuart Countess. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer with the Kia Motors Manufacturing Georgia plant. I'll welcome you again to Georgia. We're glad to have everybody here. We're located in West Point, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes to an hour south, depending upon traffic. As you can see on the chart, we started production in November of 2009, so we're coming very close to our completion of our 9th year. In that very short period of time, we've built more than 2.7 million cars. From a population point of view, we have about 2,700 employees. And then when you look at the larger supporting supply base, many also represented out here, there's another 11,000. What's been really unique from our experience is how this area has grown up along the I-85 corridor. To date, we've had $1.1 billion investment into the state of Georgia with a capacity to make 360,000 vehicles a year. We manufacture 2 products. Those are visible back here in the back. One is the Kia Sorento, which was our original product, and then we also make the Kia Optima. We're currently working on, as has already been announced, a 3rd product that will come out in the 1st quarter of next year. The Telluride. So the Telluride is certainly an exciting process for our team members. It's a new opportunity. This vehicle will only be built in West Point, Georgia, with an opportunity that we're going to export this vehicle across the world. What our team members see in this, and is part of our overall development with them, is now everyone gets to look even closer at what we do. Sometimes people will say, well, that's not always a good thing, but from our team members' point of view, we like to be watched very closely. It's a challenge. I say that for the reason that this was an area, when started up, was textile mill. So we had to take seriously the topic of workforce development, and many of these exhibits talk about what is workforce development and what does it mean to your plant. So we had to go back to the very beginnings of how to teach people to build cars. And those individuals have been very successful. So Kia has been ranked the #1 mass market brand for 4 consecutive years. And it's quite a feat to have achieved that. The Sorento has been the award-winning segment winner for J.D. Power for the 3 out of the last 4 years. Our team members have risen to the challenge each and every year because they realize that the consumer expects us to be better every single year. Not only does our competition push us, but we also push ourselves. Where do we go in the future? The future has to be about what is workforce development for us. Now we're involved into the elementary schools. If you haven't had the opportunity to visit the AWEM demonstration in the back corner over here, I would encourage you to do that. Our reasoning for getting into that area is we also know that we have to have that workforce into the future, meaning 10, 20 years out, but we have to, from our viewpoint, get individuals interested in engineering and other STEM-related areas. I think all of us in the automotive sector know that this is important, but we have to engage these young minds. We like to use the example that if you think about how a cell phone has developed over the last several years, these are a lot of smart individuals. How do we take their ideas into the next evolution or innovation within our manufacturing philosophies? I again welcome you to Georgia, and we'll get started with the questions in a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Stuart. It's interesting. I mentioned earlier today that SAC is certainly a conference. More importantly, it's a movement that has happened over the last 10 years. And we're just talking backstage, and it even goes beyond a movement. It's a community, certainly, but it's probably more, you are more like a family. I see a lot of the local content here of the 7 states involved. And our next speaker, Kevin McDanamy from Volvo, said it well. He goes into a meeting with some of his suppliers and his other counterparts at the OEMs, if it's a collaboration, and he realizes they all came from different areas, perhaps from different OEMs, different suppliers, et cetera. So it truly is a family. So please welcome our next speaker, Kevin McDanamy from Volvo. Kevin?
Good afternoon, everybody. And it's a pleasure to be here and represent Volvo. I'm the quality director at Volvo, and really I'm honored to represent the men and women here at Volvo. 3 years ago, we broke ground. Last month, we actually started building our mass production vehicles. And with that, cue the video and you get a sense of what we are and who we are.
In September 2015, Volvo Cars broke ground on its first U.S. manufacturing plant to build the all-new S60 sedans. The plant sits on 1,600 acres with 2.3 million square feet of manufacturing and office space. The operation is made up of the body shop, paint shop, final assembly, and the vehicle processing center.
The very first time that I saw the Volvo sign lit up outside, I was excited.
Oh, I'm excited because you're seeing it all come together after all this time that it's being planned. Now we can see the fruit of our labors.
Favorite thing is the people and the culture. Everybody on our team gets along and we have a good time, even though we're working hard.
When I think of Volvo, I think of the word empowering, because they want you to grow, they want you to learn. I come in, I'm excited to get here and get on the line and start my day.
When I see an X60 driving around town, or even any Volvo vehicle, I get excited about it. To know the fact that I'm part of the team that's producing the S60s here in Charleston, to know that I'm part of the Volvo family that's worldwide. It's something to be excited to be a part of.
It's a great sense of pride because I know that somewhere along the way I had a part in that process. And it also does me a whole lot of good on the inside, knowing that the family is safe behind the wheel of that car.
You know, getting that first car off the line will be a very, very proud moment for a lot of people here at Volvo, and it'll show the state of South Carolina was right in bringing Volvo here.
This is only the beginning. We will build the next generation of XC90 Sport utility vehicles around 2021 and continue to grow our team. We're proud to call South Carolina home.
I can tell you that that video can't even capture how excited the people are, how much energy they have and passion in really having a first Volvo plant built in the U.S. It's just amazing. And if you look, this is now we've got 1,000 people there building this car, and lost in this picture is the first car that rolled off the production line for start of production, and just amazing moments. So a little bit of background, we talked about it in the video, but when you look at the site, it's 16,000 acres. We've got plenty of room to grow and expand, and that's our plan. 2.3 million square feet of facility. Currently, we build the SC60 shipping in the US, and in the spring, we'll be shipping it globally. In the future, we'll be building the XC90, which is a crossover vehicle. That'll be in 2021. And when we do that, we'll ramp up to the capacity of 150,000 cars a year, which will be pretty impressive here in South Carolina. At that time, we'll have 4,000 team members. So if you look at what we're doing from an economy standpoint in South Carolina, it's amazing in our community relations and how we grow that. Just a picture of what the facility looks like. You can see there's a lot of open land. That's all expansion potential. Up in the top right is the plant and the layout. In the bottom left, what you're looking at is our training center. It's also what we call Volvo University, which is for our dealers, and plenty of room there to expand as well with in the near future. So these are some statistics about Volvo. 95% of our team members and maintenance folks have been hired locally from South Carolina. 50% of our indirect material is purchased from South Carolina. 42% of our direct material is from NAFTA, and 35% of that is right here in South Carolina. I say right here, we're in Atlanta, but to me it's right here in South Carolina. And a little bit about our community engagement. We are working very hard with all the local agencies, and one thing that we're really focused on is growing the manufacturing capability. When we came and started the company, it was not a tremendous amount of manufacturing capability in the area. And we're there to grow it. We've got a huge investment in STEM programs to really build the next generation of car builders. And so with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that was a great segue, too, on the community involvement and the engagement. That truly is, because, again, we are a family, and I think the whole New South, if you will, the automotive industry in here with the 7 states, really collectively putting together SAC and bringing together that community, in this case, to talk about the OEM's needs and expectations for the suppliers. So our final speaker on the speaker grid is Brad Thacker from Nissan, so please welcome Brad to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'd like to start, if I can, just giving you a brief recap of who, what, and where Nissan is in the U.S. or in North America, and more specifically here in the South. So I realized this morning as I was thinking about this month, 13 years ago this month, I was asked to attend a business meeting in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And the topic was murky. I went there just as an observer, really. I got there, the decision that was made at that meeting was to relocate the Nissan headquarters from LA to Tennessee. That decision was made on that day in one day by Carlos Ghosn and his team. And that resulted in what you see here, the relocation of our headquarters campus to Franklin, Tennessee in 2007, or it opened in 2007, I should say. That was, especially at that point in time, a very bold and interesting and I think risky idea that has worked out extremely well for us. As many of you know, we have our manufacturing headquarters based in Middle Tennessee, so the proximity of those two coming together has provided synergies and opportunities both for personnel development and for career development, and most of all for business opportunities that I think were beyond what we could have expected then. So that's turned out very well. Bit of a gamble, turned out very well, and you see the impact here, both financially and to jobs. We have 3 manufacturing bases really in the United States, specifically in the southern United States. We have our Smyrna plant, which has been in operation now for 35 years, and you can see the jobs and the investment there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We have our Canton, Mississippi operation. I'm sorry, that jobs number is incorrect. It's 4,000. I obviously duplicated the Smyrna number. And then we have 2 plants in our Deckard, Tennessee area, both powertrain plants that produce for both Daimler and for Nissan. We also have, some don't know, we have our consumer finance operations in Irving, Texas, just outside Dallas. So bottom line here is in the southern U.S., we have approximately 14,000 employees and we have over $11 billion of investment. So we've been here for a long time. We're not leaving. We're staying here. This is home, and we're very happy about that. So what do we get for all that investment? As of today, we're producing now all of our high-volume core models in the region. This is a very important thing for us, and we're very proud of it. We've done a lot of work to make that happen. So all high-volume core models produced here. Approximately 1.7 million vehicles, including our Mexico operations, produced in the region last year, and that number is going to be slightly higher, it looks like, in FY18. So a little more about the manufacturing operations. Smyrna specifically, I talked about earlier, in the 35th year of operation, we're producing over 650,000 units a year out of Smyrna. And as you can see, we're producing 6 models. So tremendous amount of complexity and extremely high volume coming out of that facility. And again, about 8,400 team members. Canton, Mississippi, even more complexity. And frankly, we've been working really hard to simplify that plant to a certain degree. We think we overdid the complexity piece. So we've been working to bring it back down. Still very complex, as many body-on-frame plants are. We also have, as I mentioned in Deckard, 2 facilities producing over 1 million engines annually. We're also producing cranks, we're producing cams, and a number of other forged and cast parts there for export all over the world. We also export many V8 engines from Deckard all over the world. Then we have 3 plants in Mexico. Aguascalientes, Mexico, right in the center of the country, is another important manufacturing base for us. We have 2 plants there. We have 1 plant in Cuernavaca, Mexico, which was the first plant outside Japan outside Japan for Nissan, built in, I think, 65 or 66. So a very interesting plant. And then only in the last 9 months, we've launched a new plant, our Compass plant in Aguascalientes, which is our first joint venture assembly plant globally in the alliance. And this is a Daimler-Nissan joint venture. So bottom line from all of that is we have seen and continue to see now for 6 consecutive years both sales growth and share growth, which is extremely important for us. The topic today really is what do we expect out of suppliers? So I want to take you through it at a very high level, and I'll be happy to answer questions about any of these. But the first, and this is from an engineering and quality perspective, what we expect is for you to deeply assess your organizational strengths and opportunities in some fundamental areas. Those fundamental areas are problem solving, 4M change management, recurrence prevention, and knowledge transfer or horizontal development or horizontal deployment. These are critical fundamentals that have to constantly be revisited, and we want to, and we expect all of our suppliers to constantly revisit those and take the appropriate actions. Second, anticipate and mitigate the risks of an increasingly complex supply chain. You all are dealing with this. I know you are. As much as we've seen localization of the, at the OEM level, we've seen dispersion in the supply chain. We've seen complexity growing in the supply chain. That creates a lot of unique concerns from a quality, a delivery, and a cost standpoint that we have to make sure we recognize and mitigate. And then finally, be the expert. And I hope to talk more about that later, but this is maybe the most important one. We need you, obviously. We don't just need your parts. We don't just need your components. We need you. We need your brain. We need your team's brains. We need your engineering and technical expertise. Most of all, we need your leadership. And we need your strength to stand up and say no. We need your strength to say this is too much, or we need to be doing something differently and going in a different direction. So I ask you, please, to be the expert and support us in that way. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Brad. And now we come to the fun time, some of the questions. And again, we heard four great perspectives on the needs and the expectations. How many folks in the audience are suppliers? I would expect quite a few. How many automakers, OEMs? Wow, it's about half and half, from at least looking from up here. You had a great slide, Mark, with the Mazda, the Toyota partnership, and you had Toyota needs on one side, or what Toyota brings to the table, and what Mazda brings to the table. And I think one of the key questions I think we want to kick off with is, from a joint perspective, Mazda-Toyota partnership, what are the complete key supplier needs that you're looking for?
You know, I think there's really two levels of an answer to that question. Okay. First is the high level, and I think this is probably something that we all have in common. What do we need? We need suppliers that produce world-class quality products, okay, at a competitive cost, with on-time delivery, and the supplier is focusing on technological advancement of that product design. So at a high level, you know, those are really kind of the four key things that we need from our suppliers. Technological advancements of product design, we just can't keep up by ourselves right now.
Interesting.
And in this situation, it's, you know, it's Mazda and Toyota coming together, and we still can't keep up with all the technological advancements that are occurring in the industry. So we really need our suppliers to help us.
Excellent. So they do help accelerate all four of those: time, cost, quality, and innovation.
Absolutely.
Technology. That's really good.
At a lower level, I'm going to go back to quality, okay? World-class quality. At a lower level, we really need suppliers to really kind of focus on two things. And overall, the concept is building quality into the product, okay? Building quality in at the design phase of the product, and also building quality into the manufacturing process as well. You know, working through the design of the process, getting the team member feedback about their struggle points of the manufacturing processes, and ensuring that you know, they're designing production manufacturing processes that are easily repeatable and will only produce good quality products.
Very interesting. And you're absolutely right, focusing on that up front. You can't add it on, you got to design it in.
Absolutely.
Great comment. Stuart, when talking about some of the remarks that you had, what is Kia most proud of in the last year?
So I said it previously, certainly it's the improvement in the overall brand, but the last 4 years have been a really nice representation from a mass market brand, it being the number one.
Okay.
But it's not just about what we do. You have to have partners and suppliers who are working with you. So Mark's comments about quality certainly has a huge influence. I'm dependent upon them every single day to give me good product in order for me to achieve what my team is working on. We have to find ways to work together, whether it's working on improving processes or improving designs, improving what the customer is asking for, that meaning being flexible. All of that is part of the scenario. So it takes a lot of teamwork and kind of pulling down some of the barriers that traditionally we tend to like to put up and say, well, I just can't do that, or for this reason or that. You have to have an open mind and say, what can I do? That may mean new innovative technology. It may mean a new innovative way of making a part in your factory. But if you can come at it with that approach, I think that's probably what has helped us the most recently in the last 4 years.
Really, and you're obviously very proud of that, of making that happen. But,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw earlier with Kimberly Sears being up here, she's one of those loud voices that's in our plant about we can always do better. So how do you continue to do that? And if you have a supportive team that recognizes that, then you can achieve something very easily. We've a little bit selfish in that. When the first time it happened, we kind of joked around that this is the one time your parents always told you you can't be selfish. We're going to let you be selfish about this. How do you play keep away?
That's true.
Fortunately, we've been able to do that consecutively, but everybody's chasing after you, so we'll keep working at it.
Absolutely. I love that comment because it's what you've done for me lately. Kind of in racing, you're only as good as your last race, so you'd have to continually improve. And that's certainly operational excellence as well as positioning to move forward with the suppliers that you have. Great. Kevin, comment on basically some of the data. There's so much data being generated in the industry as well as with cars. I mean, there's a book called The $0 Car. I don't know if any of you have read it, but basically you'll get the car free if you agree to give the data to the companies that are mining the data. So from a supplier perspective, will data and the analytics serve the suppliers? And what are you doing in that space for the supplier analytics and data that you're collecting?
Sure. First, I need to go back to my presentation. I forgot the most important part. The star of the show is our Volvo S60 that's sitting back over here. It's one of our early test cars. I'd like everybody to take a look at it and see what the men and women of South Carolina have done. But to your question, this morning we talked about Internet of Things. And I think it really ties to that. And if you look at traditional supply chain, we do a lot of safety stock, we do a lot of warehousing, and we do that because of the levels of quality. We put quality walls in. But as you lean all those things out, you've got to go to the Internet of Things. If you go to the Internet of Things, you really need to get into the predictive analytics. The tools and the processes, they have a sign. They're telling you what's happening as we're building stuff. But often we don't look at that, we look at just the part. And we wait until we see a failure, then we start inspecting it. So what we really see is, so we don't shut our plant down and ultimately disrupt our customer, because we need our suppliers to take that same level of focus and energy about how do you keep it up, how do you keep it running. And we really see that using the big data, if you will, about their equipment and their process, and start paying attention to what those machine faults were telling them. It may also get the part out, but that machine fault was telling you something. We need to start being proactive and work on that up front.
Absolutely. And then using that for predictive analytics, certainly, as what the next move should be to prevent a problem from happening in the first place. So total quality, total preventive quality. Excellent. Thank you. Brad, a couple of the questions that we had talked about earlier. In your presentation, you mentioned a number of fundamental areas where you like to see more suppliers continue to increase focus in the future. How do you work with them to say, okay, that's good for today, but tell us what's next? Right then.
Yeah, I think I once had a leader years ago, and some of you out there have had the same leader, and you may have heard this from him. I'll refrain from using his name, but I used the term, I'm going to get back to basics. And I remember he looked at me and said, who told you to leave the basics? What do you mean get back to the basics? But it often comes down to that, frankly, because we do leave the basics regardless of whether we intend to or not, and we have to reset that periodically. And to me, that's what we really need to be talking about on a daily basis is what are those basics? How can we limit them to a certain small number, and how can we focus on that? For me, there are really four right now that are important to our business. The first is problem solving. I believe that, like many things in manufacturing, problem solving is easy to learn, hard to execute. There's nothing complicated about it, but doing it every day and doing it to a level that it is where it needs to be is extremely difficult, and so that takes a tremendous amount of focus. I like to use a metaphor to say, I don't really care what denomination you are. I don't care if you're into Red X or Shannon or A3 or 8D or Six Sigma. I really don't care. Just pick a religion and be devout to it. That's the way, that's what I think is most important in problem solving. Pick one and go with it and be an expert at it. As engineers, I think it is the single core competency that we have to have and have to build around. The second is 4M change management. We have a lot of data now that says that about 80% of the issues that impact our operations from suppliers are as the result of a 4M change at the supplier operation. The surprise from that data was most of those changes are unplanned. So we have excellent processes to address planned changes, such as design change implementations, facility site transfers, et cetera. But very few people are preparing or it's sort of an oxymoron, planning for unplanned changes. So that's a focus that we've really been looking at. I had a supplier ask me once how they could prepare for the unknown when I asked them to do this. And I said, it's not unknown, it's just unplanned. We know what's going to happen. You're going to have a breakdown. You're going to have absenteeism. So that focus and getting that understanding out there of the importance of 4M change management, specifically unplanned, is critical. The last, quickly, and I'll group these two together, is recurrence prevention and horizontal deployment. In our world, it's so important when you have an issue, when you have a spill, when you have a failure at whatever level or in whatever operation, that you make the absolute most of that. You make the best of it. Milk every opportunity, every lesson that you possibly can from it, and then deploy it as broadly as possible so that you get the full benefit of that mistake. And getting that sort of mindset around having a problem occur, I think, is extremely important.
Very good.
I'd like to add to that if I could. My leader that I had said about the basics was, and do them brilliantly, right? And focus on them. But if you do that, you'll have more success.
Absolutely.
But earlier today, you talked about GAMA. And when you were talking about problem solving, often what we see is a supplier will come in and walk through their stuff. And when you start asking the questions, they didn't do the GAMA.
Really? Wow.
And so really, we all need to focus on, go look where it happened, fully understand it. Yep. The forms are the forms, but the reality is talk to the operator, talk to the process. It'll tell you what's happening.
That's a good point. And please jump in, any of you, if you ever want to make comments on. Be nice to each other.
But I would take that even one step further. Part of our problem is that we're not engaging those people to solve the problems. They're waiting on someone to come in and be the rescuer, put the fire out, whatever you want to call it. If you're not doing that, then you're missing a valuable resource. And the operator on the production line touches it hundreds of times a day. They typically have more knowledge than any single person about what's going on. Challenge people to give you a solution. I'm bad about it, but I'll say it, is I really don't care what your solution is or what you think it is, but at least tell me what you're thinking, because you've got to learn. And that goes even into further development of the workforce external to the plant. How do we engage people to think?
That's good. That's good. When I was a young engineer at General Motors, I was very fortunate to work with Coach Gibbs, Joe Gibbs, in setting up the first multinational, multi-team approach to NASCAR for winning. And he said something that was very profound that leads into the next set of questions. And he said, I'm going to be very consistent, and I'm going to treat all my drivers differently. And the point he made was very strong, and it really applies here, because if you're an A player, you get treated differently. You make a mistake, you get a second chance. If you're a B player, maybe. If you're a C player, you make the mistake, you're out. So a point to you, Mark, with your suppliers, and what are some of the best practices that your A-list suppliers have that you would like more of your suppliers to be like?
I'm going to piggyback off of Brad's comments. I promise I didn't steal his script or notes, but I'm going to go back to change point management. The best suppliers, the really great suppliers, manage change really well. And they're able, through that really good change point management, they're able to avoid negative impacts, to the customer, relative to missing, deliveries or allowing, defective products to outflow during that period of change. Now, one thing that Brad mentioned, he talked about the bigger level changes. TAC changes or major model changes, ECI changes, and I think most of the suppliers manage those really well.
Okay.
It's those daily changes that happen that really come as a surprise, that kind of catch you off guard.
Okay.
You know, automated processes going down. You know, do you have your plan for manual backup? Do you practice manual backup even when the automated pieces of equipment are running? You know, do you have those types of drills so that, you know, when that event happens and it is a surprise, everybody's prepared? You know, do you understand the quality gates that need to be in place if a poke yoke goes down?
Okay.
You know, those types of things. So those are the small changes that really happen on a daily basis. Again, whether it's a supplier or an OEM, we all deal with those types of changes. So it comes down to change point management, not change point survival.
Change for the man. I like that. So it's the best practices are actually part of best processes. And I imagine every one of you has a company, you have a way, like the Toyota way, or the Volvo way, the Nissan way of doing things, that those best practices are based in, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. Any comments, anybody else on any of that?
No, I mean, change management, it's
The
such a
change
simple thing, but it gets executed so poorly. And it's usually good intention. And if people would have came together, collaborated, talked about it, rolled out what the plan was, you know what to check for, but you often, somebody's making the right decision, they think, they go, I'm going to go ahead and do this at lunch, and next thing you know, you end up with some type of spill. And it could have easily been prevented by just some simple basic change management principles, as you mentioned.
That's great. Now, one of the pillars here, that one of the tracks of the sessions, and certainly some of the exhibits as well, like Leader Act, et cetera, is all about workforce management. So Stuart, one of the questions to you was basically, you know, what is Kia doing to promote workforce development?
Well, we as a company have started back into the elementary schools, working all the way through the high school levels, into a college and career academy to, again, try to give students at that age a different way to think about careers. It then goes into the technical college system of Georgia and so on. One of the items that I think all of us probably share as a resource shortage is maintenance. And there's just a different idea in individuals' heads right now about it's a dirty manufacturing environment, I don't want to do this. Well, what they don't realize is probably every single plant in here is very clean, and you've got to change that mindset. Not only that, but they don't understand what the opportunities from a earning potentials that they have at a maintenance type job is one example. So we're trying to bring people in, give them some real world views of it, but it's not just also about the students. It's also focusing on the counselors and the teachers within the schools. We view that we have three different pockets of individuals. We have people who don't want to pursue education, and that's okay. That's a choice people are going to make, and we need those people. In our case, we love them, as does everyone else. Then you need that 2-year degree individual who's going to probably fill these technical roles, and then you have your 4-year students. The ones where we struggle is right there in the middle. It takes employers getting involved in the system. We can no longer, and it was said yesterday during the board meeting, we can no longer just sit back and expect that it's going to be delivered. If we as the employers are not engaged, trying to share what's coming in the next 5 years, then we are missing our opportunity and we're going to deal with what we have to deal with. I think that's a huge change for all companies that we have got to move forward on. It will take some change, certainly from an educational point of view, because that's a much slower moving system than what we move in. I'll go back to my cell phone example. You think about a cell phone changing the number of times that it does in a single year. And it's about technology and innovation from all these bright minds. It doesn't work that way.
Amen.
So if we're not telling you what's coming in the next 2 to 4 years, the education system can't keep up with what we're doing.
Yep, yeah. We had talked earlier about innovation and technology, and to me, basically innovation is the engine of growth, and the talent pipeline is what's driving that engine. There's no doubt about it. We need that workforce to do that. So question for you, Kevin. We had talked about earlier about the suppliers' use of statistical process control and innovation. How do you promote that, and how do you use that with a supplier?
Well, I mean, a couple things. It's back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, about back to the basics, right? So it'd be wonderful to get everybody working on the predictive side of things. But the basics are, most of the equipment we have in this industry is tooled with capabilities to manage what's happening within SPC. But we often don't use it until after the fact to tell us what went wrong. And what I look at with Volvo, and as we're trying to team with our suppliers, because it's a partnership, is really sharing our data across inside of there. So as we're looking, for example, in our body shop, and we're looking at door openings or trunk openings, and we've got a supplier supplying us the hang-on metal for that, how are we comparing those items? And so that's one thing that we're starting to look at, is taking our data, putting it with their data to really sit down and say, let's work this problem together. Not mine's in spec and mine's in spec. It's really, we got to take a look at what's the process telling us. Is there enough variation? And because of all the tolerance stack-ups, you therefore then end up losing the job that you're looking to make a success out of.
So just got collaboration between like Mazda and Toyota. It's a collaboration between Volvo and your suppliers.
Absolutely.
To share that. That's very good. Brad, I'm sure you have a chance to walk into a lot of suppliers, plants, operations, offices, buildings, everywhere around the world. And that. What's the single most important thing that brings a smile to your face when you meet with a partner supplier?
This is going to sound like a strange answer, but stay with me and I'll explain. When I'm really struggling to understand who I'm talking to, what is it this person does? What's their place in the organization? And to explain that further, I'll tell you about a trip I made to a supplier. It's been maybe a year ago. This supplier happened to be, I won't name them, but they have a booth to my right. I encourage you to visit them. But this happened to be a plant in Mexico, and I went down. We had a significant problem. It was a drivetrain issue. I go into their plant. I'd never visited this particular division of this supplier, certainly not this plant. And I go in, I get greeted as usual. We sit down, we start walking through the problem. There's a room full of people. As you do in any good Japanese business meeting, I had everyone's business card lined up, and I had, I knew exactly who was sitting in what seat, and thank goodness I did, because I realized 5 minutes into the meeting, I couldn't tell who in that room was working for design, who in that room was in manufacturing, who in that room was from Canada, where the headquarters were, who was from Mexico, who was from the United States, who was from Japan, and from meaning who was supporting directly or who was supporting indirectly. They all answered each other's questions. They were all equally knowledgeable about each other's problems, whether we were talking about cost, quality, productivity, delivery, whatever it may be. They all had the same basic, and it seemed like the same level of understanding of my very specific problem. And I don't see that very often. And so a light went off for me that day, and I thought, they have it together, they get it. They are working. These aren't people that parachuted in from headquarters for my visit. These are people who know these folks. There were 4 languages in the room. There was no problem communicating. They were a team. And since then, I've made a point every time I walk into a supplier plant to assess, who am I talking to? Am I only talking to the quality guy? If I am, I really need to have the manufacturing guy here as well, or at least 2 or 3 manufacturing people, hopefully. I really want the whole crowd, but I want the whole crowd to need to be there because they all have the same sort of information and they're all sorting and pulling together. So that's something that has changed in my perspective when I visit suppliers now. It's something I really look for, and when I see it, it's certain to bring a smile to my face.
That's good. How often does that happen? Quite a bit, hopefully?
10% of the time, I would say.
Oh, interesting.
But when I tell that story, which I do quite often,
that's good. Glad to hear that. So you should be glad to hear that as well.
Exactly.
Question back to you, Mark. I think we talked earlier about 2 races you got to race: operational excellence, strategic positioning. How does Toyota help suppliers compete? Certainly on the manufacturing side of business, which is very critical, but also in the marketplace.
We really have, kind of 2 processes. Number 1 is a, annual purchasing policy. And I don't think policy is the right word. It's really an annual purchasing process in which we collaborate with suppliers to find opportunities to reduce waste and therefore improve cost, okay? We may send members from supplier engineering to the supplier and help them, reduce bottlenecks that they may have in their processes, identify low cost to no cost methods to increase their output to help them reduce cost. We may send in a team of quality engineers to help them improve their first run rate, reduce their scrap, and we may send in, skilled labor to help them with any type of product machine problems that they're having. All that kind of comes through that annual purchasing policy process. And then, really on a continual basis, we try to ensure that we're supporting from both the plant level and the corporate level relative to any type of struggle point or business need that the supplier has on a continuous basis. We've, from the Huntsville engine plant where I worked at, we've dispatched human resources, safety, production control, maintenance, to suppliers. And, when we dispatch that help, it's really that, it's help. It's, people to go in and do whatever the supplier needs us to do, not go in and try to run their shop. We're not trying to do that at all. We're trying to provide hands-on help and support.
So you're helping them be competitive, but it's a win-win.
Yeah,
they win, you win.
Absolutely. One thing I'd like to point out is, we do depend on that andon pull and that call for, for help. And I know that's always a struggle to invite your customer into your shop and kind of communicate that you're having a problem. But, through teamwork, we can solve those problems.
I can remember being at NUMMI, if anybody's old enough like me to remember NUMMI, in Fremont, California, and GM-Toyota partnership, and grabbing that andon line, and GM said, that will not work. They'll be pulling the line all the time. And Toyota executive said, trust us. It's there to be used, just like you said, so great example.
Yeah, hey, John, I'd like to
please
add on to that, and as well as Brad's, about putting the smile on your face to the supplier. All the OEMs have production systems. They're well structured, and one of the basic things that's inside of there is 5S. And you go into suppliers, and their focus is on how to produce parts usually. And when we're coaching and helping support suppliers, I think that's one of the key elements is you go in there and you're looking at the 5S, because right away, if you see good 5S, it can start that smile on your face. But from there, it kind of builds, because then you look at what is the actual engagement of the management team and the folks on the floor.
Good.
And the ones that are on the floor and actually understand the process, the standardized work is there, it's documented. You know that they've got the right elements in place, they're focused, and they're thinking about making sure they're getting you good parts out of there. And I think that's really important when we look at our suppliers.
That is great. So it truly is a joint approach to success, and you need that consumer. Stuart, a question. I think this is a really good one. We talked about a lot what suppliers are doing. What are some of the challenges working with suppliers? I mean, it's not that easy.
Well, it's easy to work. It is easy to work with them, but I think their challenge, and it goes a little bit to Mark's explanation, is most of these suppliers don't have the infrastructure systems that we have. In many of the cases, some of these, they come in from overseas somewhere, and unfortunately, they're left to survive on their own. So when you have problems, doesn't matter what the issue is, you quickly find out that there's a lack of experience, there's lack of structure of how to go about solving whatever the particular topic is. We have to recognize what that is up front. And that does mean you send in other resources to try to help guide them down the right path. But there also has to be a communication back to ultimately their headquarters that this needs to be addressed and fixed, and that's easier said than done. So I believe that will still remain to be a challenge, because the majority of them are here for obvious reasons. They're here for cost. They're brought here to build a good quality product. But there has to be a realization that that quality level of that product, the longevity and survival of that individual supplier, also is dependent upon the infrastructure that's built around them.
So the product quality that we've talked about, but certainly the relationship quality for getting that challenge.
It absolutely is.
We've talked about the data, Kevin, and SPC, and the idea of big data, certainly big decisions made on a lot of the big data coming in. But what about the transparency of that data between suppliers and OEMs? Because data is the new oil. I mean, you got to mine it.
it ties to that relationship piece, right? To build a relationship, you've got to build trust, and with that trust is transparency. Because when we have breakdowns in communication, usually what happens is we also then have breakdowns in our process. We receive parts that aren't at the quality levels we look for. We then start into these sorting activities. But the suppliers that we do really well with are the ones that really share ahead of time with us. And likewise, if we start to see something that's looking abnormal, we start to communicate back with any of our measurement data we have, and likewise them back. And when you do that, you really build that trust, and it is a partnership. You know, it's about winning. We can't win without each other, and I think that's extremely key to continue to grow those partnerships, and the transparency is all part of that. A lot of times people don't want to share their data because they're afraid it's going to share the sins, right? But the reality is, you learn from that, you fix them quickly as a group, and you can work through those issues a lot faster.
Maybe easily say or look at paper, but hard to do. You have to have the relationship to be able to do that. So Brad, I mean, in terms of supplier expertise, and Nissan obviously expects supplier to be the expert. Tell the audience a little bit more about it. What do you mean by be the expert? What would that pertain to?
So what I mean by that, and it's really, I think it's building on what Kevin said about trust and transparency. It's, we obviously need the supplier's parts, we need your components, but we need a lot more than that. We need your technical expertise, and we need your leadership. And I think the leadership piece gets lost quite often. We need that. It can be very difficult to keep perspective. And the great thing about working with suppliers is you're all, you know, especially tier ones, you're all working with your own suppliers as well. You know where we are in terms of mindset, you know the challenge at any moment. So you're in a great position to reflect back up your concerns, your considerations, and tell us no when we need to be told no. I was about to say it can be very hard to lose perspective about when to stop. You know, we all have come up through a culture of continuous improvement, and it is and should be continuous improvement. But there comes a point at which behaviors and expectations and challenges move over into the area of destructive actions and destructive activities. And I will tell you, we don't always know where that line is, and we make mistakes. So when, you know, I've told my people for years that I've worked with, please don't sit back on your hands and watch me do something stupid, because I will. Tell me about it, stop me. If you love me at all, stop me. And that's what I really ask of the supply base is give us the hard truth when it comes time to hear it, and make sure that we listen. And if we don't, give it to us again, maybe a little bit louder. I watched, just quickly, I don't know if any of you have seen the new David Letterman show that's on Netflix. It's great. If you haven't, check it out. He interviews Tina Fey, and he's asking about how to do improv comedy. And she tells him two things, and one of them is, she said, you use yes and. Whatever happens before you, you say yes and you build on that. That, I think, is a valuable lesson for us to learn in OEMs dealing with suppliers, and suppliers dealing with your tier two. No matter what is said, say, yes, and I'm going to do this. But I'll add in, you need to say no, but as well, too. You can say no, but say no, but here's an alternative. So when I say be the expert, that's what I mean. Not just the technical expert, but come at us with your knowledge. You know what's going to work. You know what's not going to work. You know what timing's impossible. We need to hear it. We're not going to like it, but we need to hear it.
Good. Well, that was the segue. We're out of time, and like you said, the segue stopped me. I got the signal, stop John. So please join me in thanking our great speaker guests today, Brad, Kevin, Stuart, and Mark. Thank you. And thank you for being here.